Hello again for the fourth episode of the Jackson
Fifth.
Post. Fifth. No, hold on.
Your numbers are off, dude.
Fifth episode of Behind the Paywall, Jackson Post.
Not
Week
even 2 seconds in, and you're making a
I know.
mistake.
Well, what is this the week of? All my dates are off. Yesterday was 420. I know that because it was 420 on Easter. So today's the 21st. Week of the 13th through the 20th. Jackson Post print edition came to your mailbox Friday, I believe, April the 18th. So you've had plenty of time to read and digest this copy. So we are going to build a little context around these stories, and we're going to start with Superintendent Marlon King discussing the work, touting the work, according to the headline, of JMCSS at Rotary. All right, so what were some things that stood out, Brandon? Oh, go ahead.
Well, before we get into that, I just want to acknowledge, I'm not feeling a reboot of the Blair Witch Project, which I imagine that most of the people who watch or listen to this would get that reference. But no, I'm just in my backyard while my kids get some work done in the house. It's about 9 o'clock on Monday night. So, and hopefully they're wrapping it up and getting into bed soon. So anyways, the work of JMCSS. Yeah, so right now it's springtime. It's April, and this is generally the time where Dr. King tends to be sure to put some public stuff out there about what all is going on in Jackson-Madison County schools on the positive side of things. And because he has the gala every year in April, the last 3 or 4 years. And there's usually a presentation or 7 before some members of the county commission, whether it's the budget committee or some other committee, as they are making their budget requests for the largest department in the county. But he's kind of ramping that up a little bit now. He spoke at Rotary, which I think this is the story that we're discussing. A week before, he spoke somewhere else. Was it at a chamber event?
I always I confuse Rotary and chamber all the time, so don't ask me that. I
Well,
think it
there's
was a chamber event.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap between Rotary and Chamber. And then today, and we're recording this on April 21st, this morning he made about a 30-minute presentation that was essentially, I don't want to say a rerun. It was like my pastor, Adam Dooley, Rotary was the 8 o'clock sermon. Well, this morning, County Commission, he did the 9:30 service sermon at for the full body of the County Commission and all the other department heads, where he's talking about all the things that the students are learning, all that they're doing, the academic achievements that they're hitting.
I want to stop you real quick. Do you remember any specific ones that he mentioned, or was he just like
academic achievements?
Yeah, the academic achievements.
Wow. He talked about the ACT, but I forget what the benchmark was there.
I know there's a focus on 30 plus, right? Like I know we highlight that, obviously 21 plus because that's Hope Scholarship stuff, but I think the 30 plus is something that's really been touted, not to steal your word from your headline.
Right.
Like in the last few years in the school system.
Yeah, they get essentially a version of a credit card from the school system that they are able to use until they're 20 years old. So if they make a 30 or plus, 30 or higher, as a sophomore or a freshman, that's 6 years that they can use it, get into any JMCSS event for free. And that's the main benefit from it. But there's a few other benefits that you can get from it too, to the point where Dr. King is sharing the story of a young man at Madison who I think he said he had his wallet stolen, and he was able to get his wallet back and able to get his ID and his debit card and stuff. But his black card, that's what they call it because it's very simple. It's a black card. His black card wasn't in there when he got the wallet back. So he emailed Dr. King and said, hey, can I get a replacement? Dr. King tells that story to kind of say, hey, the students are taking this seriously, and they are using this as an incentive to try to do well on the ACT. They're not just doing it just because we say, hey, you need to do this for college. They're doing this because we have created something that they want to achieve this for. And whether it's that or changes that they made academically or whatever, the changes are working because there are maybe not 40 seems like a high number, but there are a high number of students. Well, it's 5 high schools. It wouldn't be that high.
8 per school right.
Yeah. And early college high and Madison are probably going to have the bulk of those. So yeah, it's probably up over 40 that have made at least a 30 out of 36 on the ACT. And that number just keeps getting higher and higher.
It's really interesting because, of course, I work in the school system and I deal with testing, and there's not as much of a focus on ACT as there should be. And I'm not
Hmm.
saying like simply because we have to focus so hard on EOCs
Right.
because those are the state accountability tests, which, by the way, I don't know if you're paying attention to what's going on in Nashville. That
Mm.
bill is still alive to basically do away with all high stakes testing in high school. So it's now, I know the session closes pretty soon, but there's a chance that that could make it all the way through, which would be huge because
Are
if
they
you
going to
could
do
take
anything for third grade?
no, TCAP is going to remain the way the bill's written, third through eighth, but possibly only in reading and math. I think they'll take out social studies and science from that. No high school EOCs. I don't think there should be high school EOCs, but that would leave a lot of room to really start focusing on ACT in ninth grade. And
Yeah,
then I would think you would see these scores,
go
I
up
guess,
even further.
go up even further. So, and that's a really big deal. When I read this article, the one thing that I was reminded of and I've forgotten, and I shouldn't have forgotten this. Hey, it seems like Dr. King's only been here like a couple years, but he's going on his sixth year, right? I mean, he came in 2020 and we're in 2025, almost
Yeah,
the
he's
middle of it.
wrapping up his fifth year. Yeah.
Yeah. Leading into his sixth. And I remember, like, I could not imagine coming into a district during that time and trying to navigate my way through that during COVID. And, I think there are some things that I appreciated about the previous regime from an instructional standpoint, more so.
Right.
But as far as just like directing and leading a district almost as a CEO would lead something and navigating and delegating responsibilities to people, having a vision, taking care of employees, all of these capital projects that are happening. Man, if you pull back and you look at what he's been able to do in 5 years, with COVID being that first year, so really 4 years, and obviously a
Right.
lot of money from COVID that allowed him to do some of these things. Man, it is very impressive. And I know that there's been some friction between county commission and him 2 summers ago, but things seem to be smoothing out. We had a big turnover in the school board. People wondered how that was going to work. He's handled that beautifully. It seems like it's very smooth. Things continue to like build. And
Hmm.
some days I'll walk to my job at JCM, and I've been walking by the Hub City Central complex, and I was
Right.
walking home the other day, and you can start to see it. It's forming now. Like you have the press box, you have some things that are it's finally there. And I've known this in my head, but I really felt it the other day. Like this is it's a transformational project for that part of the city.
Oh
It's
yeah.
going to be. I mean, like, I'm talking people. I don't think people realize it. You hear a police helicopter. That's my windows are open. There's somebody sleeping at Campbell Lake, I assume, in the police report. So that's what that's what that sound is. Anyway,
Close the door.
this is going to be a transformational project for specifically that part of town. All the people coming into sporting events that use the track, like I don't think people realize how big a deal it's going to be for the community, especially right there. So it's very hard to argue with what he has been able to accomplish in 5 years.
This is how big that project is. 2 years ago, when they first started talking seriously about this. Well, they were talking seriously about it before that, but when they really start talking about, hey, we're getting ready for a groundbreaking in a few months, even though nothing's going to happen 2 months after the groundbreaking for nearly a year. But Mayor Conger and the city leadership, when they were having town hall meetings about long range planning for the city and its different corridors, when they had the meeting about East Jackson, the completion of this project pretty much was the centerpiece or the cornerstone for any kind of plan down Lane Avenue, and working through East Jackson started there. So this isn't just a JMCSS project, while it is JMCSS funding it or the county funding it. This is a project that's going to affect more than just the students, but the city. And they're hoping that it's going to have some economic impact as well. I mean, the track and field facilities, the plan is to have a track and field facility that could host some college conference championships, like if Lane wants to bring the SEAC, or if, randomly, pretty sure they wouldn't do it in Jackson, but if the SEC just randomly wanted to have their track and field championships in a fairly central location where they'd never been or stopped before, yeah, everybody fly to Memphis or fly straight to go to Atlanta or Chicago and then fly to Jackson and come see what they got over here by Lane College. And there's even talks about, hey, if spring fling ever comes up from the TSSAA ever comes up for bid, they could be very close to actually being seriously in the conversation.
I just don't see how it doesn't provide like economic growth down there, right? It's almost impossible for it not to. I mean, just the amount of traffic and people you're going to have coming, and we're not even talking about like middle school football games on a Thursday night, that they're going to be using that, I believe. I don't want to misspeak or anything, but I mean, there's going to be things happening down there all the time. And
yeah, they can have girls soccer matches on Tuesday night, middle school soccer on Thursday night, and the Cougars can play their homecoming game on Friday night, and then have some Pop Warner games on Saturday. And Eric Turner doesn't have to worry about, will I be able to step on this field Monday because it rained too much? He'll be able to actually have a field to practice on.
And like you said, the best football team in the city will finally have a home stadium.
They are the Commissioner's Cup champions.
That's right.
Raining right now.
So good work by JMCSS. Transitioning to a sort of a sad topic, but I have a personal story about it. Jackson native Wink Martindale passed away at 91, a legend. The day he passed away, I went out to eat with my parents, and my dad was, you know how older people get upset about some things. He was very upset that WBBJ did not mention Wink Martindale passing away on their local telecast, but the Jackson Post did. Front page. I have a little story about Wink. And in 93, my parents took me and my friend R.P. Benson to Los Angeles. We did a California trip for 9 days, right? Went to L.A., San Diego, and San Francisco as big Giants fans. So we watched the Giants play in San Diego, drove up to San Francisco, watched them play a series up there.
In between, this was 93?
93, yeah.
So they were good that year. They played the Braves in the NLCS that year.
Well, let me correct you real quick because I cried at the end of that season. The Giants won 103 games. The Braves won 104. They were NL West. It was the year before the wild card. Braves, the last day of the season, advanced to the playoffs. The Giants went home.
So who'd they play in the playoffs? The Expos?
Who, the Braves? No. But possibly, yeah, because the Braves were NL West in 93.
Yeah.
Whoever the East champion was. But anyway.
Yeah,
yes, that's okay. So in Los Angeles, they hand out these free tickets to go to game shows, like these studio game shows, right? And we know Wink Martindale was a game show host. That's why he's famous. And so we go to Trivial Pursuit that Wink Martindale was hosting. We were sitting up in the crowd, and at the end of every show, if they have some extra time left, they will call a member of the audience to come down and play the game and win some money. And it's on television and everything, right? So we're sitting up there, and the PA guy goes, our guest contestant is Nancy Hart from Jackson, Tennessee. You know, my mom's looking like surprised, and so she gets up there, walks down. She's wearing a shirt with a watermelon on it. She got the built-in shoulder pads, like not the football ones, but the kind that women wore in the late 80s, early 90s.
Little puffy bubbles on the shoulders.
Yes, so she's down there. The first question was something about, it's about Satchel Paige, and she had no idea who Satchel Paige was, so she got that wrong, but she got the next three right. The best part about it, though, is when this came out on television, we recorded it, and she looked about as embarrassing as we thought she did on the camera, because after every question, she'd turn around and give us a thumbs up, turn back to the camera, pull her bra strap up that was apparently falling down, but this is all on camera. 4 questions, she got 3 right. We won $75, and she paid for supper that night. But that's our memory of Wink Martindale. He was super nice. I still think that she got called down there because they knew we were from Jackson, and he was from Jackson.
Yeah.
So that was her 30 seconds of fame.
Wouldn't be the biggest shocker. But so did anybody besides her get to meet him?
I don't remember meeting him. I didn't care who Wink Martindale was when I was 13. I was just wanting to go watch Will Clark and Barry Bonds play. But I think possibly, I know my dad's met him several times, or but anyway, yeah, sad to hear it happen. But I'm glad that you covered it, Brandon, because it's what local media should do when a famous Jacksonian passes away.
And honestly, I mean, in the last few years, when I first saw that he had passed, I was like, oh wow, one, he is from Jackson, and it wasn't that I've forgotten, but I guess. He's 91 now, so he kind of faded from the public spotlight for the most part. And I don't think he ever did any public appearances after I moved here. The latest that I remember hearing, our friend Steve Beverly mentioned that he did something with him at Union in 2007, and I moved here in 2008. I mean, it's very possible he did, like a fundraiser or something like that, and I was in sports and just didn't hear about it
Mm-hmm.
or just don't remember it. So we talk about Carl Perkins and the last few years we've talked about Heron, Gil Scott Heron,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and Sonny Boy Williamson. A lot of the music people have come up a lot, particularly during the bicentennial stuff. And, for whatever reason, Wink has not been mentioned a lot when we're talking about some of our famous sons and daughters that have gone on to bigger and better things outside of Jackson and West Tennessee. So I do regret that we haven't tried harder about just kind of keeping in touch with him. But yeah, I was glad to make sure that there was a proper recognition / celebration / send off to recognize his passing this year.
Right in the middle of the front page, there is a story about the new birth choice adoption agency. So, talk a little bit about that. And I do have some questions about the adoption agency specifically. But for those who don't know, birth choice is what?
Birth Choice is a faith-based nonprofit here in Jackson that they want to make sure that a young woman who's with an unplanned or unwanted pregnancy, or even a married woman with an unplanned or unwanted pregnancy, has all the information before they make any decisions. And obviously the big choice that they are addressing is whether or not to abort the baby. And y'all may be hearing some input as my wife lets my dogs out into the backyard here. If they get too loud, we may have to pause the recording. And they're not shy about which choice that they hope that the woman makes, but ultimately it is the woman's choice. They've expanded. They celebrated 36 years with their fundraiser this month, and over the 36 years, they've expanded from just an organization that just tries to talk you out of aborting the baby to they've got an ultrasound machine. So if you don't have access to an ultrasound, you can see the baby, you can hear the heartbeat if you're that far along in the pregnancy. They've even, a few years ago, they unveiled a mobile clinic, which is essentially, it looks like a bookmobile, except instead of a mini library, it's a mini prenatal clinic almost. That, if I'm remembering right, I think they have two, and I think both of them have ultrasound or sonogram machines or something on them. So that is the definite, that's, at least from my perspective, a description of Birth Choice's mission is to give the information, hoping that the mother who may be considering not choosing life, will ultimately choose life for the baby.
And they never claim to be like neutral on that, right?
Right.
Like, so I think that, I mean, it's not like it's almost feel like it could be birth choice asterisk or birth choice question mark, because it's not, I mean, it is the woman's choice in the end, but they're going to lean one way on this. And it's not like they're keeping that a secret. So that being said, the adoption agency seems to be the most logical next step, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because my thought would be, even though I would much rather be just a neutral laying out of here are your options, my next thought would be, if you are leaning on people not to have an abortion, then are you providing them any other help on the other side of whatever that is? Because I feel like, again, I don't want this to be an opinion show, but I do feel like there's so much emphasis placed on this issue of, oh, we can't, abort a fetus or a baby. And then once the baby's born, like, good luck.
Yeah.
Do your best, right? So if this is what they are going to be, an adoption agency seems like it's the most logical next step. So is that how this is going to work together? Like, are they going to help the mother who has the child? Like, is that, how's that going to work?
Yeah, so essentially, either a mother will come in, or a pregnant woman will come in and say, "Hey, I'm pregnant. I don't want to be a mother. I don't want to raise a child, but I also don't want to kill the baby. So I'm going to give birth, and whatever the process is to get this baby adopted, I want y'all to do that." And so they hired another lady named Lisa Reasons, she's got her master's in social work, and she's got all the necessary certification to be able to handle adoption connection and placement and inspection and all that stuff. And in addition to that, if young woman, or well, I keep saying young woman, I guess because that's the stereotypical scenario. A woman gives birth, and whether she's single or not, she thought at first, I'm going to raise this child, but she has a baby. She's like, no, I can't do it. Then birth choice is, for lack of a better term, hopeful and is working to build relationships with medical care facilities in 34 counties of Tennessee, that they will be the first call for, say, hey, we've got a baby here. We've got a mom who has said she don't want to raise it, so she's giving it up for adoption. And when they first said that, I said, are they not required to essentially give it to DCS? And essentially, they're not required to give it to DCS. It's just there's no one else to call besides DCS. But if they don't give it to DCS, it's got to be somebody approved by them. So they're getting that paperwork finished up. They're close enough to the goal line that they can go ahead and start announcing that they're about to score. But they haven't crossed into the end zone yet, as far as that goes. But they're kind of wrapping up the paperwork. But very soon they'll be able to start going through that process. And so now Lisa is making those contacts with medical care facilities, first responders, physicians, churches, in pretty much every county between Shelby and Davidson and Kentucky and Alabama to be the person, because Memphis has an agency with an adoption arm, I guess, and Nashville has one. But there's this big gap on the map between Memphis and Nashville, and both of those places are so populated that they've got all they can handle in just the city limits. So Birth Choice is trying to fill that gap geographically.
It seems like Jackson is becoming a hub for, I mean, obviously for a lot of things going on, even like nonprofits like this. When you mentioned that, it reminded me of the immigration services that are offered here. Only one in between Memphis and Nashville, right?
Yeah,
Like, so there are a lot of things that there are just a lot of gaps, right? It's rural West Tennessee, and West Tennessee for a long time has been overlooked or underdeveloped, however you want to say it. I mean, I would say, well, East Tennessee, there's obviously some poverty far East Tennessee, but West Tennessee, there's a lot of counties who struggle financially, and so it's just been it's been a slow process getting things going. And so when you don't have things going, then you don't have services like this or like the immigration, right? Like these things just don't sort of pop up on their own in the middle of desolate regions. I have a follow-up question about the adoption agency. A few years ago in the state legislature, there was a law that was passed that allowed adoption agencies to, for lack of a better term, discriminate as far as who they allowed the children to be adopted by. So, if you are a Christian adoption agency, and a Jewish family wanted to adopt, you could be like, no, we don't think that's the best scenario for this child, so we're going to wait for a great. Do you have any idea if that's sort of like if they're going to operate in that way, or is this going to be like, obviously you're not going to put a kid in a situation that is unhealthy and
right.
abusive, right? But
Yeah,
is it going, because I mean, they're very religious heavy, so is it
right.
going to go that direction, or is it going to be sort of like a open playing field?
I'll be honest with you, Gabe. I totally forgot about that law
Mm-hmm.
until just now when you mentioned it. And if I had remembered, I would have asked, because that is a question worth asking. Because we do, I mean, yes, Madison County and rural West Tennessee is a largely Christian area, at least as far as what people claim to be. But we do have other religions that are represented, and that if I'm a Jewish family or Muslim family, or I'll even go ahead and throw this out there, I'm sure the next question that anybody watching or listening is, will they allow same-sex couples to adopt or even foster? Because they've essentially got their own foster care service where they, for the emergency babies, they call it cradle care. And I apologize, I did not think about that perspective on things, so I did not ask the question, so I don't have that answer for you.
Yeah, it just popped up in my head. Like, I mean, I
Yeah,
was just thinking about that because, again, we're just talking news here, but
right.
obviously any scenario where a child can have a stable and loving home, regardless of religion or sexual orientation, that's probably the best thing for that child. All right, so let's see. We can talk about Hugh Harvey next week because I do want to get into that a little bit. But I think we
Yeah,
can.
yeah, because this week's paper is going to have the official acceptance of the county commission of his resident or retirement that happened this morning. So yeah, we can hold off on that till next week.
Big faith section, and I'm not gonna. We don't really talk about opinion stuff in here, but I did notice that faith was a double page, and obviously it's Easter weekend. It's like the Super Bowl of Christianity, right? Like it's Super Sunday.
Jesus' AFC versus NFC.
Did you say AOC? I thought you said AOC. You said AFC.
AFC
Versus the NFC. Yeah, Eberle and Adam Johnson, the NFC. I'm always a Packers fan. Julie and Brady are they're the AFC.
Right.
I'm not going to get it. Here's what I will say about the faith page. I do feel like finally, right? There's some balance there, and I appreciate that. Like you're going to have a faith page. I think there needs to be multiple perspectives of that faith, written out and played out.
Hey, back in November of 22, when we started this thing, that was the plan. And fortunately, I'm very grateful to Reverend Eberle. And do we call Adam Johnson Pastor Adam?
Pastor, I don't think.
Yeah, I think he is a pastor.
Is that what it? Would he go by Pastor Adam?
Well, I know Adam Dooley goes by Pastor Adam in Inglewood.
Well, that's why I'm thinking Adam Johnson probably won't go by that.
But I mean, I do appreciate that they have offered to give a different perspective on things, and I love it. And in fact, I don't think I'm a member at Adam's church and in the same denomination as Drace and Brady, so I agree with just about everything they say, particularly scripturally. But Mary Beth or Adam, neither of them has ever said anything I disagreed with, and if they did, I wouldn't. It's not that I wouldn't run it; I'd still run it. But yeah, there's not just on the pages of the Jackson Post, but also in the Jackson Post brain, there is room for more than one opinion.
Yeah, and I think it works best when all of those are laid out in the same week, same page, things like that. So
right.
Last thing, and this is something else that's a little bit personal to me, just because I know Coach Schuetz. I've known Coach Tony Schuetz for 99? What is it? So 26 years, probably, tangentially. So he was at USJ forever.
A million years.
I never thought he would leave.
Yeah.
When I worked in after school care program, he was the PE teacher. When I was in high school at JCM, I remember going to the USJ JCS girls basketball game. This might be my junior year or senior year. I don't remember which one, but it was the game where he had that iconic picture of him on the Jackson Sun where he's like pointing to the sky. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
He's pointing up. Like I was at that game, and like that's for as long as I can remember from that game forward. I was like, man, that dude knows how to coach basketball. When I worked at USJ and I coached middle school there, he was coaching high school. And that was the year they went to the state tournament. They played Peabody, Trenton Peabody. I think this was 2004 or 5. It was 5 because I was coaching softball and we had Katie Brush was on the basketball team. And we were waiting on her to season to get done so she could come play softball.
Right.
But they had that amazing run. And Peabody was coached by Terry Lumley, who coached at Tigert when I went to Tigert, right? So they met up there, and this was before Division II and all that other stuff, right? Public and private schools were playing, and I think Peabody won. I think it was a physical game, but man, that USJ team that year, if I can remember, Katie Brush, Courtney Alvey was an incredible player. This was before your time here, I think.
Right.
If you came in,
this was about 3 years before I got here. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had some really good teams before that, but then he just kept going. Until I guess he left USJ in 2021, I believe, to go to JCM for 1 year. And that's when they brought him and Rudolph in. And he had so much success initially with JCM. I was honestly surprised. I'd coached middle school in the public schools after I left USJ. Girls basketball. Now, Southside is clearly the exception. But in the middle school grades for a long time, especially like 2010, 11, 12, 13, girls middle school basketball around here was rough in JMCSS. Yeah. And I don't mean rough like physical. I just mean there was just a lot of work that needed to be done. And so when Tony took that job, and I hadn't been involved much in middle school JMCSS coach basketball or anything like that in a long time, over a decade. But when Tony took that job, I thought, ooh, like that's going to be tough for him. And man, he had a ton of success his one and only year at JCM. And that was the year where they didn't have a building at first or a place to play, He did a lot in that one year. And then, of course, went to JCS. And I think did they go to state this past year?
The last 2 years, they've made the state quarterfinals. And I think Division II officially calls that the state tournament, since quarterfinals is in Division I in Murfreesboro, but only the semifinals are played in Cookeville. So they didn't go to the state tournament, but they made the state tournament, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So when I coached at USJ, and I would sometimes go into the high school practice and watch, or Tony would come over to middle school and kind of talk to girls or whatever, just kind of watch what we were doing.
Yeah.
And he was intense. He would yell. And so when I started officiating and I got a USJ game, I was like, how's this going to work? I'll tell you an inside story. This was not that long ago.
It's back in January.
Me and Tommy Separillo, and I can't remember who our partner was. It was a big game. It was USJ and somebody at USJ. And man, not a minute into it. There was a free throw. I'm like on the baseline about to, bounce the ball to the shooter. And I hear Tony yell something across the court at Tommy, who's over at the C position. Tommy yells something back at Tommy. And I'm like, oh, this is a minute into the game. And I'm like, these two, but I think that's like what makes both of them so good at what they do, because Tony, he was so intense all the time, but the kids love playing for him, right?
Yeah.
Now, over the course of 30 years, you're going to have kids like, oh, that guy, one or two or something like that. But for the most part, kids love playing for Tony. And if you're a high school coach, that's all you can ask for. If you can get kids to want to play for you and love playing for you, then you'll be successful.
This is how good he's been at that aspect of it. He spent 30 years at University School of Jackson, and I imagine he had a fairly good record against Jackson Christian School. Then after 1 year in public school, he puts down the green, picks up the darker shade of blue, and he walks into the locker room on Country Club Lane. And 3 years later, we see that he got those girls to play for him. Now, he had, I think every girl on the team tore at least one ligament in one of their knees this past year. That's an exaggeration, but they legitimately had, I think, 4 or 5 season-ending knee injuries this year that they had to deal with, including right at the end of the regular season. I would assume what most would say is their best player, the only one that signed a college scholarship, Gibson Boykin, and so they had to go through the postseason, not just without her, but they didn't have really a lot of time to adjust to going without her. But he had every girl on that team ready to run through a brick wall for him, and they had totally forgotten. Oh, this guy coached for what one Jackson Christian fan that I know calls the evil empire.
Sounds like some of JCS fans say about USJ.
Yeah, for 3 decades. So yeah, he's not just a good X's and O's guy, but he's really good at recruiting his own hallways too.
And I don't think it can be overlooked. I'm 45, and I could tell my last few years in the classroom, I was having trouble relating to kids. Just kind of getting on the same page with what they like, what they're into, what's funny, what's not funny. I mean, it changes pretty fast. And with the advent of like cell phones and social media and things like that, it has really accelerated that change. COVID, of course, did the same thing. But for him to be, and I'm not throwing shade at Tony for his age or anything, but for him to have coached for 30 years and to have that gap in age between, however old he is now, somebody's been coaching probably since the 80s, and now these kids in 2025, to still be able to connect and relate to them as well as he did, I am very impressed by that, because that's something I can't do as well as I did when I was younger.
Yeah, and I think something that's helped him do that is he got married to, obviously, his wife, Stephanie.
That's what happens when you get married. Yes.
But and 11 years ago they had a son, and a few years ago when I was still at the Jackson Sun, I did a special, and I was still in sports. I did a special Valentine's Day edition where I did 3 stories highlighting coaches' marriages. And one of them that I wrote about was them. And they were talking then, and I think Z was 3 or 4 at the time. But they talked about, and Stephanie was an assistant coach by this point at USJ for him. But they were kind of Z was coming with them to games, and during the girls' game, I think they'd find a parent who'd be willing to just kind of hold them during the game while they're watching their daughters play, or find a parent of one of the boys' players and let them hold while they're watching the girls play. But essentially, Z got like 15 older sisters for
Right.
about 6 months out of the year. And Coach Schuetz told me during the interview that one of the best things he ever did was try to incorporate the family with the team.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of helped build a lot of camaraderie, starting with Z and then just kind of building out from there. And it also, when they can see him in an environment where he's not barking about zone defenses or man defenses or trying to break a press, but seeing him as a husband and as a father, that shows him in a different light, that makes him a little more relatable. And they're even more willing then to run through a wall for him. And that was real key to his success toward the end.
If a teacher and a coach can find a way to show some humanity outside of whatever their role is to their students or their players, and obviously there's a line, right? It's a balance, because you can't go overboard to where you're like just telling all your personal stuff to your to your students. But if they can see that humanity, like, they buy in so much quicker and so much easier to what you're trying to do, because it's relatable at that point, right? I mean, when I taught my kids, when my daughter lived in Texas, they knew she lived in Texas. They knew I went down there every other weekend. Like, they knew that part of my life because it was important. It was part of who I was too. Who let the dogs out?
It's just major.
While we're talking real quick about sports, do we have time to run through the list of the Hall of Fame inductees?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
And
it's
talk
only
for them
fitting
real
since
quick.
Coach Schuetz was one of them.
That's right. I know. I wanted to say that. And some familiar names are popping up, including Glenn Jacobs. I did not realize. Why was Glenn Jacobs the MC of the Sports Hall of Fame? Was he the MC or the speaker?
Yeah, he was just a keynote speaker. They bring a keynote speaker in every
Right.
year. And, I mean, I imagine, hush, Major, sorry. He's been, I mean, he spoke in Jackson back in November at the Rotary Club. And then he spoke again in February at the Reagan Day dinner for the Republican Party. And I imagine somewhere on that 27-member Jackson-Madison County Sports Hall of Fame board is probably a couple of Republicans that are very familiar with Glenn Jacobs. And in fact, one that comes to mind that I am 90% sure is on that board is our district attorney, Jody Pickens. And I know back in Rotary in November when I interviewed, I'll go ahead and call him Kane, General Pickens walked by and like he stopped in mid-sentence talking to me to say hey to the DA. And they had talked about how they had gotten to know each other at a couple of different statewide functions and conferences and stuff like that. I mean, and so there's that, and I'm sure that there's about 27 other connections between him and Madison County that could have done it.
I just remember, Will Clark, who I've mentioned already once, he was the keynote speaker in 2000. Look, you and I both, we love wrestling. We love it. And we could have a whole show on wrestling.
We will one day.
But, like, it's sports entertainment, right? Sports entertainment.
It's still an athletic.
But the like it is. It's very, yes. But the winners, we know the winners before it happens. Like, the competition angle of it it's just different. It doesn't line up with, like, Sports Hall of Fame sports. That's why I was wondering why Glenn Jacobs was the keynote speaker. But more importantly, let's talk about
why do you always have to rain on parades, Gabe? Come on.
I don't. It was just odd to, like, Glenn, like Kane, like, okay. Maybe I honestly, maybe he played college basketball. I don't know, or maybe he played college football somewhere, or it was that angle.
Yeah,
just like Glenn Jacobs.
He talked about his athletic background pre-wrestling at Rotary, and I'm trying to remember what it was. But he was playing basketball at a small school, I want to say in Arkansas. He was raised in Missouri, so maybe it was either Missouri or Arkansas, or maybe Chicago. Well, for all I know, it was in Alaska.
He ain't from Chicago. It wasn't Chicago. It was either Missouri or Arkansas.
Well, but the college may have been in Chicago.
I see. Yeah.
And the football coach talked him into coming out for his senior year of football. And he did well enough that some scouts were interested in him. And after he didn't get drafted, he went to a undrafted free agent camp in Chicago. That's the Chicago connection.
There we go.
And
okay.
He had suffered some injuries to, like, his ankle, right before the camp. And, like, the second day, Chicago sent him home saying, yeah, you're not going to, like, heal up and maybe train and come back. And he never did that. And then he was watching wrestling one night, and his friend talked him into trying out, and then the next thing you know, he's walking out beating up the Undertaker in a cage.
Well, I stand corrected. He does have an amateur sports background besides physical theater. All right, so let's talk about Paula Fuller. All right, JCM football and tennis standout Bo Hardigree. These are the inductees into the Hall of Fame this year.
Right.
USJ quarterback shortstop Jake Overby, basketball coach Tony Schuetz, Tom Britt, and the 2006 Jackson Christian football team.
Also, Josh Aldridge.
I don't know Josh Aldridge, and I don't know Paula Fuller. So can you kind of give us some background on them?
Yeah, Josh Aldridge was a linebacker for Jackson Christian the year they won state, 2000.
Okay.
He went to go play somewhere in Arkansas, maybe Harding. Harding may be wrong, maybe Pine Bluff or somewhere over there. That's one of the smaller schools. Got into coaching, and he has worked himself up the coaching ranks. Got connected with Hugh Freeze at Liberty. Hugh brought him to Auburn when he came to Auburn. And this past offseason, or earlier this offseason, he accepted the job as defensive coordinator at East Carolina.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So East Carolina, they're not Power 5, but he's at a coordinator position in a school for a program that's seen some success. I mean, I've covered a bowl game with East Carolina, Liberty Bowl game that East Carolina played in. I think they might have won that game. So, yeah, it's not like he's taken over at Union's first football team in 50 years.
Right.
He's moving up the ranks. And then Paula Fuller, she's got two claims to fame: playing basketball and being a dominant basketball player at West High, and then later at Jackson State. Also, she birthed Damon Fuller, the head boys basketball coach at Southside.
Yes. Okay.
And she's a longtime employee of Jackson State. I want to say, is she recruiting coordinator for Jackson State? It's somewhere along the lines of getting students from high school and attracting them to Jackson State. Still works hard at that job. You see her on campus, and she looks like she genuinely loves her job. She's not one of those that's just sitting in the office collecting a paycheck, waiting to retire. Big part of the environment, atmosphere, personality of Jackson State.
Nice.
And, she made her mark on local sports way back when, and you could say she's still making her mark now because it's kind of hard to have her without Damon Fuller. That time she gave birth to him was a big point in his coaching career.
That's a take right there. We should stop it. That was a big moment in his coaching career. The day that he came into existence, yes. Otherwise, he'd just be coaching from the third realm out there somehow, playing 4D chess, as some people say they do. Actually, and I hate to keep bringing this back, but like this paper is like littered with people that I've crossed paths with.
Right.
Back in the day.
That just means you've been around for a while.
I've just been around forever. Bo Hardigree, he was not at JCM by the time I had left, but his dad was.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually worked with his dad at USJ as well, and his dad is still working at USJ.
Yeah.
As we speak. But I remember Bo.
His dad is Jim Hardigree, by the way.
Yes, that's Jim Hardigree. You know, Bo was a pretty thin kid, and I was like, man, how's he going to like handle like high school like football JCM? I think we were 5A then or 4A whenever he was in. But he turned out to be like a very talented big time high school quarterback, and a lot of people don't really remember either that he was like a big time tennis player too, right? Like, Is that why so is he going in here as like a football, or is it more of the tennis? Because he was incredible at tennis.
It's probably a little bit of all three.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say all three, not just, yes, he was, the last time JCM was good before this past year, he was the quarterback. And did they make it to the state quarterfinals that year?
I don't know. I had no idea. This is like 2002, 2000, something like that, 2001.
Oh, I thought it was
those years
later, but yeah, maybe it was 2003 or 4.
Yeah, it was when I remember Daniel Brooks was like the one who was like the really big recruit out of that class.
And
I think he kind of flamed out. That's, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It would have been that
year. Okay, yeah, so 03. Yeah, because he was the same year before Chris Donald coming out of Huntington.
That's
which,
right.
by the way, Chris is an assistant coach at Southside right now. He has been for the last couple of years. Yeah.
You know that.
But anyways, sorry, that's a whole other tangent.
I get you talking about high school football.
Yeah.
I don't know where you're going to go.
But he was, and I knew that he played tennis. I didn't know how successful he was as a tennis player until I saw his Hall of Fame resume. And I was like, okay, yeah, you should get in for that too. And then he probably would have made it for the Hall of Fame, maybe not for necessarily if he had never done anything Hall of Fame worthy in Madison County. It's kind of hard to hold a guy out of your local sports Hall of Fame who was a local athlete and is now working his way up the kind of like Aldridge in college. He's working his way up the coaching ranks and now in the NFL. And for a time there, he was the offensive coordinator for the Las Vegas Raiders, and now he's come close to home coaching quarterbacks, and he's going to be the key to the revival of the Titans, and they're going to go to the Super Bowl this year and win it all simply because they got Jackson's own Bo Hardegree.
Wow, it's a lot of pressure. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I think it does speak to, because I may get this wrong, but just if I'm remembering right, he went to UT, and I don't know if he played tennis at Knoxville. Obviously, he played football. And once you get into a major program like that, even if you don't get a lot of playing time, which I don't think he did, if you are smart and you work hard, you can soak up so much knowledge about the game and make these connections that can help you further your career should you want to like go into coaching or something. And I think that's what happened with Bo. I think maybe because I think he after Knoxville at some point he went to Duke because Cutcliffe left Knoxville and went to Duke, and I think Bo went to Duke because of Cutcliffe, and I think because of Cutcliffe's relationship with Manning, I think Bo somehow went to Denver for a little while too, and then went with Adam Gase to Miami. Am I remembering this all correctly?
Yeah.
I believe. And,
there were a few stops between Duke and Denver. Like he was at
okay.
LSU for a little while.
I didn't know that.
Under Les Miles. And I mean, he was there for at the most 2 years. I think it was just one season. But yeah, Denver, Miami, Las Vegas. I want to say there were a couple other college stops in there too. LSU, Tennessee, Duke. Yeah, nothing else is coming to mind. I want to say he might have stopped in Chicago for a minute, but I could be wrong. I don't have his resume right here in front of me, so I apologize if I'm wrong on that.
He's done very, very well, obviously. And of course, the highlight of his career thus far was the induction into this Hall of Fame. It doesn't get any better than that, probably.
Has he been to a Super Bowl?
I'm being facetious. I mean, he's the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans. Like, that's going to be...
Well, he's quarterbacks coach for the Titans.
Quarterbacks coach.
He's not their OC. But I'm legitimately trying to remember, was he in Denver the year that everybody started calling Peyton the Sheriff? And he retired, but they won the Super Bowl on his way out.
Possibly if Gase was, then I would assume he was, but I don't know if Gase was still there or not then.
That's right, yeah, because he was kind of attached to Gase for a lot of the time. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Jake Overby, who is a quarterback shortstop at USJ. I got to coach him in middle school along with his brother Preston, and Preston's in the Hall of Fame as well, correct?
Yeah, 2 or 3 years ago he was inducted.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Well, both well-deserved, incredible athletes. I remember they both came to USJ. Preston came as a 7th grader. Jake was a 6th grader. And, like, there are just certain kids that you know, like, even at that age, like, well, they're going to be – this is a Division I athlete. Right, you knew Preston was 6'1", 185 in like the 7th grade, 8th grade, right? Quick, athletic, and you're just, I mean, it's only a matter of time. You just got to like let him grow into his body and figure out how to use it the right way, and it's gonna be, he's gonna be unstoppable.
Tell Mickey Marley and Brad Dyer not to screw him up, and he'll.
Man, yes, but here's the thing. Like, it's so funny. During that era at USJ, a lot of, like, the athletes that we had playing middle school basketball, most of them never ended up playing in high school because they went either to baseball or football.
Yeah.
Or both. They did both. And it was just too much to do 3 sports because they all just, you know what I mean? And so basketball was the one, unfortunately, just kind of, like, got dropped. Man, and I think Preston, I don't know if he played all 4 years of basketball at USJ. I think he may have done 9th and 10th and Jake as well. I don't remember for sure, but both of them could play. I mean, honestly, any sport that they put their mind to, they would have been highly successful.
If you just asked me the question blankly, did they play basketball? I want to say one of them did play their senior year, and maybe both
Jake
did. Okay.
I think it was Jake. If I had to pick one, I think it was Jake. I might be wrong about both, but
yeah.
I do know both played in middle school, and both were really, 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 really good. And they're good kids. Like, and they come from a great family. That makes a huge difference, obviously. So both of them are very deserving of this. Is there anybody we left off of the 2006 Jackson Christian football team?
Yeah.
So this guy, Aldridge, he gets in by himself, but then they're going to bring the rest of the team on too as well?
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
kind
how
of
that
like
works?
Bret Hart and the Hart Foundation.
That's what I was getting. Right. It's like that. Uh, it's funny that 2016, you weren't here yet,
Right.
but the quarterback that won the state championship game at JCS had been at USJ. Yeah, Matt
Clay?
Hudson. Matt Hudson. No,
Oh, Matt
Clay
Hudson.
Clay got hurt, I believe, and Matt had to come in.
Okay.
And I coached Matt in at USJ as well, middle school. And I would say we remained, I don't want to say like close, but we would keep in touch even as, he grew up and as an adult. And every now and then I'll fire him a message off or whatever. So yeah, that was a really cool, like that Jet JCS team in 2006. Like, I don't know, I wouldn't say that was unexpected, but I think we were all kind of like, whoa, hey, like that's a surprise that, and it was dramatic and it was exciting. And like they think a lot of that team at JCS.
Well, as they should. It's almost like the 72 Dolphins in the NFL is the only team that's gone wire to wire undefeated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And every year, the team gets together and has champagne or whatever when the final undefeated team takes their first L. It wouldn't shock me if, I don't think they actually do this, but it wouldn't shock me if, like, maybe there's a group text with their head coach, Brian Stewart, texting all the boys, like this past year, I think Jackson Christian and TCA both were eliminated on the same night, maybe JCM too, the third week of the playoffs, and which would be the semifinals for Division II, quarterfinals for Division I. And, maybe Stu sent a group text out, hey guys, it's still just us now in Jackson.
That's cool that they inducted the whole team. Very neat, and I like that we have the Hall of Fame, and obviously I hope we keep that going every year. All right, Brando, we're over an hour. Well, we've been rolling tonight, so
When Major is barking, that means it's time to go.
it's time to go. It's 10 o'clock. It is time to go. All right, we'll see y'all next week on Behind the Paywall, Jackson Post, Behind the Paywall, Beyond the Paywall, something. See y'all next week. Goodbye.
See ya.